Today we had a fantastic conversation with Kirsti Lonka, the author of Phenomenal Learning from Finland. She has been a pioneering researcher since the 80s. She brings a fascinating perspective to the connection of education and technology. Please enjoy this amazing episode with Kirsti Lonka. Kirsti, welcome to the podcast.
Oh, thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here.
So nice to finally have you in the podcast. I've been wanting to have you on the podcast for a long time. And before we start, I would actually like to have your autograph if you'd like to sign my book or my version of your book, please.
Yes. I'm sorry I don't have the Spanish version here, the Latin American version.
Next time.
Yes. I have to tell you that I'm actually on a way of writing a new book because things change so fast. So we need to update everything to the AI era.
Yes, I know, and I want to talk to you about that.
Yeah.
So before we go into the book, maybe you can introduce yourself and your earlier research. You have a very long research career, but some highlights and something you want to mention from your research up to publishing this book in 2018?
Yeah, that's a good question because I think I've had so many lives, so I need to be very, very brief. I started studying psychology at the University of Helsinki when I was very young, directly from high school.
Okay.
And I got a job as a junior lecturer when I was 24. And then it was a great place to be because there were great scholars, and I became eventually a doctor in psychology.
Yes.
But I was also quite early involved in learning and instruction, and also part of starting cognitive science. And then I did my postgraduate doctoral coursework in Canada, University of Toronto at OISE. And that was a great experience, studying applied cognitive science and philosophy of mind and getting to know the basics of AI already then.
Wow, and when was this? What year?
Actually, I was there between 88 to 90.
Wow.
And we visited, for instance, these parallel distributed processing labs, and we were actually already then studying with Professors Gardameili and Bereider. We were studying by using computer-supported intentional learning environments.
Wow.
So I got very early this introduction to the world of educational technologies. But what was important, it always started from the logic of learning and pedagogy rather than from technology.
Yeah, and let me ask you already now, because that's so interesting that you already then had this connection from psychology to technology, because I think that that's something we've missed the last few years, the decades, maybe even since we're not taking into account the psychology of learning when we have too much technology everywhere. So how was that the connection already back then from your perspective when it came to technology from a psychological perspective? So what were your, let's say, early research, or what was the thinking?
Actually, I was very early introduced this idea of collaborative knowledge building. Mm-hmm. So that what we were doing via computers, we were collaboratively building new knowledge and learning by creating knowledge.
Fantastic.
So these kinds of ideas, my thesis was about constructive processes in university student learning. So I've always been interested also in student learning and how to improve that. So there's always been this idea of betterment, not just seeing how things are, but how can we develop things. And around the time I actually moved to medical school. I was recruited to run their research and development center in pedagogy because they wanted to become problem-based. And they also wanted to introduce doctor-patient communication skills and these new kinds of competencies. And that was really exciting. We were turning medical teachers into problem-based tutors, and the whole curriculum was rewritten. I already had some experience in writing curricula in psychology and cognitive science, but this was really exciting, and there were 100 people involved, and the whole process was very... it wasn't easy, because new things I've noticed over my career are not easy. There is always this huge kind of, let's not fix something that isn't broken. And people never think that there is anything wrong with what they are currently doing. And I've been trying to tell them that we are not changing things because there is something wrong. We are changing things because our environment and technologies and the world is constantly changing, and we cannot become like an outdoor museum. But from University of Helsinki Medical School, I was asked to apply a professorship in Karolinska Institute, Stockholm, which is a medical university, and I was a professor of medical education. That was really cool because we had all these things like virtual patients, high-fidelity simulations, KI learning lab, and I was involved in that kind of amazingly inspiring environment. And there I also had PhD researchers and a research group. I've been always building a research group wherever I am, and supervising PhDs. And then I've been also visiting professor in the Netherlands and in South Africa and some different countries.
But before your PhD, had you worked with education as an industry also, or you went into the problem-based learning methodology for medical doctors or hospitals? And I think you mentioned in this book something about the real need to solve the problems also. Like if you're a classroom teacher and you see that, okay, your problem-based learning experiment didn't work, so you go back to the old ways, thinking that is a better option. Whereas if you're a medical doctor, it's like a life and death situation that you cannot really go back to the old way because then the patient dies. So you kind of had a faster, let's say, feedback loop with the problem-based learning
that's
methodology.
That's a kind of the spirit when you go to medical education. It's a matter of life and death. So you really need to develop the optimal learning solutions so that people not only know what they know, but also they can put in practice their knowledge, and also that it's heavily research-based. I always had this idea of research-based education. And my basic field is educational psychology, but there was no professor of educational psychology in Finland until 1996.
Okay.
And when I came back from Sweden, I kind of came back to my roots, and I got this professorship of educational psychology. And that is where I've been spending the last 20 years of my life.
Yeah.
And the students are wonderful, and our Faculty of Educational Sciences has been most fruitful place for me to be, because I've had wonderful colleagues, fellow professors. We've had big projects, and we've been doing fascinating research about learning inside and outside schools and institutions.
Great. So to come to your book then, so before 2018, what was the research focused on? If you mention a few topics that then in the end led you to write this book.
Well, I've always been into the school world, partially because my husband has been a primary school teacher since the last 30 years.
Okay.
And I have a very close connection to the school world. But I've already been doing my first studies at the Department of Psychology. I was analyzing how students were responding to different kinds of matriculation examination tasks. So it was about reading comprehension and writing. essay type answers in these exams, and that's what I continued in medical school, to develop new kinds of admission strategies and new kinds of exams, entrance exams to medical school as well.
Okay.
With my colleague Sari Lindblom, and that was like cognitive psychology. It's about how people study, what kind of study strategies they use, and how that predicts success in different kinds of tasks. So we quite fast learned that in order to get good grades in any domain, psychology, medicine, etc., you need to really actively process information. Many people think that successful learning is something like you just intake knowledge and then you just kind of print it out. But that's not the case. I learned very early that the only way of really learning at the deep level is to actively process the information, elaborate on it, organize it, think, and develop your thinking skills and your study strategies. And that's one of the things that we did. But in the end of 1990s, the cognitive approach wasn't enough anymore. We started investigating motivation and emotion in learning, because these cognitive things can only explain like about half of the learning. But very much our interests, motivation, emotions, and also our social emotional learning are guiding our success in not only studies but also in the workplaces. So I've been constantly working with businesses and companies and different kinds of societies, and trying to also apply this knowledge outside university.
So if we come to the book, your Phenomenal Learning from Finland book, that became a really big success. I've been also part of distributing this in Latin America. I've heard so many people wanting to have this book until it finally then came also into Spanish, and then it's been translated to I don't know how many languages. But really, what are the main concepts from the Phenomenal Learning from Finland book that you saw as the most important ones, let's say before the pandemic? So this is like a pre-pandemic book before we come to the post-pandemic era.
Yes, actually, I think it's translated into 8 languages. The most recent is Arabic. We have a teacher education program in the Middle East as well.
Great.
But the book is especially popular in China. And the Chinese edition is still very strong, and I have collaborations there as well and projects. Maybe the main idea, I wanted to introduce the Finnish history and language and educational system in a nutshell. Where are we coming from? From poverty. Finland was 100 years ago one of the poorest countries, if not in the world, at least in Europe. And after 2 world wars and so on, our only asset has been here. This is our nuclear accelerator. So a country in northern part of Europe without huge natural resources, our main asset is our brain and our mind and our creativity and our education. And since the last 150 years, Finland has invested, even before independence, in education, and we have been the biggest readers and the best readers of the world. It has something to do with our language, because it's quite phonemic. But maybe the thing was that, and then I wrote about how educational psychology and the psychology of learning and motivation has informed our school system during the last maybe 30, 40 years at least. And also around the time I was writing this book, we just introduced a new curriculum in Finland, a national K-12 curriculum and also in high schools, and increasingly taking seriously this idea of the future skills that we need, or 21st century skills, or transversal skills, however you call them. I know that many people find it a bit annoying that do we need to teach all of this? But they are very much also integrated in different subject matter areas. But what was new then, I have been working already for decades with interdisciplinary research, like medicine, cognitive science. They are like, by definition, very interdisciplinary. Engineers, medical doctors, mathematicians, biologists, behavioral scientists working together to solve very complex problems. Not to mention something like what we have currently, global crisis of economy, climate change, all kinds of very wicked and complex problems. And that's why we need more than just knowledge of some subject matter domains. It's important. I'm a psychologist. I know a lot about psychology, but I also need to communicate with people who have different approaches to the same information. So in 2016, these national curriculum principles also introduced interdisciplinary projects. And that's a topic that is very close to my heart. Also because for the last 20 years, I have had this special kind of experimental class teacher program where at the University of Helsinki, the law is stating that people need to become class teachers also in majoring in educational psychology. And I've been running that program with my team.
Okay.
And they've always studied in phenomenon-based ways, in also developing their collaborative skills and teamwork skills and all these broad-based competencies, in addition to studying the psychology of learning and also different didactics in different disciplines. But this was, there is a lot of dispute and discussion about the usefulness of this, and there have been even false information, like even BBC was declaring that Finland is giving up subject matter-based teaching, and it's not true. Actually, 90% or more of our school teaching is still subject matter-based. But adding these 1 or 2 interdisciplinary projects per year, the idea was probably that it's easier to integrate these broad-based competencies through such projects. I know that, for instance, I know people from Aalto University been collaborating with Aalto University of Technology, as it used to be, where project-based learning is very common and popular. Also in our vocational universities, in many places, research projects. Researchers are constantly working in projects. And for instance, we did one study about high-level researchers who are investigating climate change, how creative and interdisciplinary area that is, because it's highly complex and you need so many different kinds of people to collaborate in order to solve such problems.
Yeah, and the whole idea of the phenomenon-based learning is, of course, also that it makes it more concrete for the learners, the children, the students, that you connect the subjects to real-life phenomena, and not just problems like small problems, but really big, complex phenomena, and then you attack them with the subjects. So when you only focus on the subjects, it's very difficult to see the purpose of it in isolation from the real world.
Yes, and many people talk about multidisciplinary and what is different, like multi-professional and interdisciplinary or interprofessional. I learned that in medical school we've been investigating interprofessional teamwork. And multi means that you have multiple topics or multiple disciplines, and then everybody's kind of doing their share. But inter means that I can take your perspective, you can take my perspective, and we can create something new together that is kind of going beyond of our own subject matter understanding.
Yeah.
And with little kids, our early childhood education in Finland, it's actually totally playful and phenomenon-based.
Yes.
There are no subject matters, and even science studies in our primary school there is a topic science, natural science. There is no classes in biology, chemistry, physics separately, but it's science. So actually our science education in primary school is very phenomenon-based to start with. And with children, they are not solving climate change or doing research, but for children, it starts from something that makes them curious and interested. And it starts from children's own questions and wonderings about why is this so and how can we do this? And then we start with the phenomenon of interest for the children. And the adults kind of facilitate that and help them and give structure and teach them through this experience. Because curiosity it's actually, there is now accumulating evidence that curiosity and interest are the keys for effective learning.
Yeah, let's go deeper into that, because you mentioned something about the interest and the motivation, curiosity, if you want to define them a little bit, how they drive learning and maybe should drive learning more than, let's say, instructive approaches where you don't take into account the student's perspective as a starting point. And then before we go into a focus on technology and the role of technology in education. So on a more fundamental principle-based level, and also maybe connected to the book's principles, what can you say about those aspects, interest, motivation, curiosity, and that role in the entire education system?
It's really funny. I just opened an old book by Piaget, and he was already talking about interest as a major driving force for learning in 1960s. So there is nothing new about it. Einstein used to say that I'm not talented, I'm just profoundly curious. And he said that's why he was so slow in learning. I think he would be in some kind of special needs class nowadays, because he was always wondering something. If they gave him binoculars, he wouldn't, and watch stars, he would just investigating how does this thing work. So children are naturally wondering things, and many scientists that I know, they kind of remain like curious children until very late age. And that's the driving force of their life that makes their work enjoyable and life exciting. Is they're constantly curious about something new. And that is what we tend to lose over the years at school.
Yeah, and how could we maintain that? Like, with what pedagogical principles could we maintain, let's say, through teacher training, also this curiosity at the center, and also with interest as a motivator?
Actually, we very often think that interest or motivation is something that comes from the inside. But actually, interest is something, Piaget was actually saying this very early, it's something that is between me and the object of study. It's kind of that I start building a relationship to mathematics. I start building a relationship to history. And I kind of it starts kind of drawing me. And that is the thing that we can actually foster interest. There is a lot of research showing that how to engage your students. That is one of my favorite themes in my work, has been my whole life, trying to think about how to make learning more activating and engaging for students. And there are lots of ways of doing that, and they're very simple, actually. Instead of starting giving answers and telling the answers to the kid, you know, kids are like, you can see them when you start lecturing to children, they start like, 10 minutes and they are somewhere else. But if you start, they ask a question and then you start asking, how do you think yourself and how do you solve this problem? That's what child psychologists have always done, trying to figure out how children think and how they solve problems and activating what they already know, putting these things in a meaningful context, then supporting their learning with gentle feed forward and scaffolding, building support for learning and motivating them. And then there are lots of problems in studying. For instance, some students are highly performance-oriented, and that's actually institutional creation. In countries where people are constantly testing kids and constantly having kind of accountability or kind of wanting objective results, we know that children develop in very different paces. Somebody learns to read when they are 5-year-old. In Finland, we go to school at 7. You may learn how to read subtitles from TV at 5-year-old, or then you can learn to read it when you're 8. And there is nothing wrong with you. The development, for instance, between girls and boys may be 1 or 2 years when it comes to these kinds of things.
Yeah.
So we are trying to kind of have one-size-fits-all solutions. But even within an ordinary classroom, a teacher can do a lot. Our early childhood educators are brilliant. They are educating. It's a cornerstone for any educational system to have high-quality early childhood education. And then in Finland, our primary school teachers, they have 5 years studies, first bachelor and then 2 years master's, and everybody has a master degree, and they can teach 13 different subjects, and they have excellent understanding of educational processes and pedagogical things. But then it changes. The higher we go in our educational system, the more expert-based it becomes, and very often increasingly abstract, and especially at the age of teenage, of the young people, like early adolescence. When people move in Finland, they move from 6th grade to 7th, from primary school to secondary, and suddenly everything changes. And there is this worldwide concern about school engagement and learning results dropping over the middle school or lower secondary. And that's one problem that we need to fix.
So let's look at the technology's role then.
Yes.
To maybe help this also when it comes to individualized learning and evaluation methodologies. What's, in your view, the role of technology to assist these processes that might also be still based on pedagogical principles? Like, what do we really want to do, and then how can technology help us with that?
Yeah, there are so many different solutions. My new job description at the moment is to be academic director for Helsinki Education Hub, which is actually an edtech startup incubator, which means that we are trying to help to develop research-based, pedagogically sound solutions for these problems I was referring to. Of course, it depends what is the problem. For instance, in mathematics, languages, you need different kinds of solutions. There are these subject matter based, but then there are also these more generic, more general problems or challenges that we need to face. How to space learning, how to pace it so that it works, how to design pedagogical learning paths so that they are engaging and informative and help you to accumulate learning. We have lots of kind of little things here and there, And we have a lot of generic technology that is actually not designed for learning, that people are using for learning. But we would need more collaboration between teachers, educationalists, researchers, engineers. Actually, educational technology is a very interdisciplinary effort to create increasingly up-to-date solutions for learning.
Have you seen that has been the case the last decade, or is it something that we're only reacting to now? Let's say I've been observing, during the pandemic, this crazy boom of technology into education, pushed into education that has nothing to do with, learning psychology, and there's no research behind it in many cases. Have we come to a phase, if you agree with that hypothesis, have we come to a phase where we now realize the importance of the research or the science-based thinking before we have a technological solution? Let's say the pedagogy before the technology.
Yeah, actually, there have been a lot of good work already before COVID, but there is a great inequality when it comes to this because, for instance, we had already digitalized and created learning paths for our large introductory courses in educational psychology 2019, just before, the pandemic hit. And there are lots of schools that were already technology ready, 20 years ago in some ways. But it has too much depended on individual teachers and their active role and how much role they take about this. What happened, this kind of storm of technology, Zoom, Teams, very rapidly creating these kinds of solutions that were frustrating, were not working for us, were not really designed for learning purposes. And unfortunately, there was this consequence that many teachers and educators started to hate any technology, and now they just don't want to hear about it anymore because we were pandemic challenged us so that it showed how vulnerable we are and how not ready we are to use technologies for learning. And we can talk about what we know about how technology is currently used in learning.
And please add whatever you have to say about your own research also since the pandemic started or since after publishing your latest book. What's your personal research about, touching on technology and education? And then also connecting to your role now at Helsinki Education Hub, what's the purpose there really in practice?
It's where maybe I could say that this is generalization. It doesn't apply all. But mainly the general problem is that business people and engineers are designing solutions for learning, and they may not have any kind of expertise about that area because it needs an interdisciplinary effort so that people who have experience, who are pedagogically sound but lack readiness or available technologies, that they could come a part of this endeavor so that they could together start solving these problems. And there is a huge amount of research that we can already build on. We know a lot about what kind of learning is effective and what is not. And we've been trying to understand, for instance, if we say the concept screen time. Now everybody is saying that put off the phones and cut the screen time. And there is a genuine and absolutely important concern for well-being and health if we are constantly like this, are not exercising, not sleeping. But instead of labeling our youth addicts, we need to look at what kind of forces are against them. and how they are using technology and what purposes and what kind of use of technology is useful for their well-being and their academic achievement, and what kind of use of technology may be harmful. So we started 2013. Our first project was called Mind the Gap, which was Mind the Gap that is becoming between schools and institutions and the outside world. Because basically when we look at the data in 2011 in Finland, technology was used 10% at school and 90% outside school. And mainly for entertainment. When we started looking at those who were born in 2000, they were on 6th grade primary school. More than 60% would use technology just for hanging out with friends, sharing photos, all this that we know from social media. They were even too young for it, actually. But still, and I don't blame people wanting to have social lives, online or face-to-face. But we saw that this kind of activity was, over the years, really not linked to well-being or academic success. Then we had a tiny percentage, 10% of the kids, already on 6th grade who were doing something creative with technology. Amazing things. We have investigated creative ways of young people using technologies. And what was interesting is that about almost 25% were active gamers. Very often parts of gamers, kind of networks, and they were very global. For instance, nowadays Finnish boys, they were mainly boys actually, these active gamers. We've been also doing brain research, and we had difficulties in finding female subjects to our these fMRI studies because it's more likely that boys are gaming. What was interesting is that nowadays Finnish boys are better in their English skills than girls. Partially, obviously, because these gamers' societies are international and the language is English.
Yeah.
Use more internet. And also one benefit for playing games is that it even at the brain level it helps fosters your attention. And then also multitasking, on the contrary, appears to have kind of not so good effects on your attention. So you can actually ruin your own attention by constantly multitasking, which is like jumping from one thing to another instead of focusing.
Yeah.
So then we started following up these kids. We followed them. They are now, I think, 26-year-olds. But through pandemic years, we also followed this cohort born in 2000. And the importance of knowledge-driven and interest-driven activities online was increasing over school years. In high school, those who had knowledge-driven activities online, mainly outside school, because it didn't happen very much at school, they were more engaged at school and their grades were better. What was most kind of striking was the decrease of study engagement. Engagement means that you are excited to go to school, you are absorbed, you are energetic. But and burnout means that you start feeling inadequate, you start feeling exhausted, and you start becoming even cynical towards school. And over lower secondary or middle school, especially boys, and especially those who wanted to use technology but didn't have the chance, started becoming increasingly cynical about school. And we already found this quite early, and it starts then showing. It usually happens so that first goes interest and motivation and engagement, and then the learning results start decreasing. For me, it appeared, the data that I was looking at, the results, almost felt like we are alienating these young men from school already during middle school. And that's a huge tragedy if they start questioning the relevance of school and we cannot help them and we cannot provide them meaningful technologies that they could use.
Could you see also that those boys or those children were using technology in creative ways? Were those students, let's say, more gamers, or could you see any of those indications? My follow-up question would be, is it the school that is failing to be relevant for children's development and boys are understanding that, or are boys failing to keep up with what they should keep up with in school?
Yeah, but there was, I could say that what is the cause and what is the effect? We did these follow-up studies looking at disengagement and compulsory internet use. We don't want to call it addiction because because it's truly not kind of personal trait. It's more systemic. But what we found was that first came disengagement at school, and then came compulsory kind of internet use. So it appeared that this kind of alienation happened so that first they started to feel alienated and then they escaped. It was more escapism, to escape to the internet world because it felt more authentic and meaningful for some reason for them.
So, and if you follow them or make a hypothesis about their future, would you think that these boys who disengage from school find sooner or later something more meaningful and productive for their future lives faster than those who just still, let's say, stay like with their blinders on, following the school system?
Well, I wouldn't say blinders on. There are lots of strengths in our school system, but the fact is that nowadays girls are more likely to go to universities, and they are doing much better at school. But they also suffer. Instead of becoming cynical, they become exhausted. There are some studies showing that for boys, their well-being increased when they graduated from middle school and went to vocational training. They found their own path. Girls who continued to high school, which they do more often, they started showing symptoms of exhaustion.
Yeah, and I think
they kind of reacted to this treatment different ways because what is the problem, I would say, if I may say this, is that that we have this totally wrong conception about what is knowledge and learning and knowing. We think that jogging through vast amounts of knowledge is the thing to do. And everybody, very often when I discuss with teachers and future teachers, they feel that they need to just teach and teach and teach these things that are in the curriculum. They still see curriculum as a list of facts that you need to go through as a teacher, instead of thinking, what would be the most effective ways of the students to learn those things? Because kind of me telling you facts and going through vast amounts of knowledge quickly, we know from learning research it's not a very promising approach for sustainable learning.
And that's where I see that the girls in these studies are more obedient, and they still continue consuming the knowledge, the facts, and succeed until university, exhausting themselves because they still don't feel it being meaningful for themselves, their life
Yes.
purpose, whereas the boys are more rebellious in general, and then they look for their own path and become also healthier when it comes to mental well-being as a consequence.
Well, not necessarily, because
Well,
still,
maybe less exhausted at least.
yes, because when it comes to burnout,
Mm.
cynicism is the worst thing that can happen. I've been investigating medical students, and there, if you start becoming cynical about your studies, then that is very quickly leading to burnout.
And I read somewhere or heard somewhere about this progress. So there's like a cycle. So first maybe you're naive when
Yeah.
you're young, immature. You're just naively
Yeah.
thinking that, yeah, the world is amazing and I will have an amazing life. And then you start getting problems and realize that this was quite difficult. And isn't that when you become cynical? Before you grow up and get this experience and maybe burn out or get exhausted or start again and find another path, and then you find a more meaningful pursuit, and then you come to, let's say, a more purposeful life and reach the higher level of, let's say, towards wisdom. I don't know,
Yeah.
there's like a psychological path, I don't remember how it is, but
Yes,
I think there's
yeah.
something after this being cynical, that it's actually a part of the maturity.
Because cynicism means, it doesn't mean like when we are saying somebody's cynical, it's sarcastic or something.
Yeah.
But cynicism in this context means that you don't find any meaning. You
But
don't
what-
find your studies interesting. So
Yeah.
you don't have any relation. You don't find it, your kind of question its value.
Yeah, but isn't that better? That's my argument. Isn't that better, like a higher maturity level than to be naive and just blindly doing what the teacher says?
I would say that we wouldn't, we have this terrible labeling that we
Yeah.
label girls. Like, I was a girl with good grades and I was still rebelling.
Okay.
So
No, I feel that I have this personal, just to add my
Yeah.
personal perspective, because I was a very good student. I liked studies.
Yeah.
I was a very naive boy until I went out and traveled to the world and realized, okay, life is different than what they told me in school.
Yeah, but being naive and innocent is
And I
good.
think it's good in the beginning when
Yeah.
you need a protected path until you become a little bit more mature and where you start looking for your independence, and then realizing, okay, I cannot only trust blindly on the system, even if it's a school system or your country's political system, or it's still you have to keep developing your own critical thinking.
Yes,
so that you
yeah, and
take
that's
your
actually
own decisions.
that's actually the most important broad-based competence is thinking skills and learning how to learn. But imagine if we would have a school that would not make our young people cynical or exhausted. What if they would feel engagement and start enjoying studying, which very much, according to our evidence, happens outside school. So it means that there are much more attractive things happening. And many kids feel that they cannot really learn deeply at school because there is no space for thinking.
Yeah.
And when we are doing this jogging across curriculum contents, the kids remember 10% of what we are saying, but instead of, if they would actively being challenged to process information, debating, talking, we know a lot about educational research that we can make things meaningful for them. We are measuring actually even physiological measures, heartbeats, physiological data. We can see, we are measuring excitement, we are measuring boredom, we are measuring different kinds of academic or epistemic emotions. And we know that in some classes, in some occasions at school, children report engagement, even flow, and it's a pedagogical thing. Flow just means that you have a high challenge and you feel competent. And gamification is actually thing that we are constantly kind of going to the next level, and you feel that you are learning something, and you lose the sense of time, you get absorbed. And I think it's great pity that we have these people who are just obedient or naive and doing as adults tell them to do? What if we would support more students' autonomy, give them interesting projects, let them learn all these same things that they would learn, but much more efficiently? We know what kind of learning is effective and what is not.
Yeah.
A passive role of student and just telling people things is not effective. And that's why people are so prone to get a compulsive use of internet. Compulsive means like you are kind of addicted to it. It means that it's so much more engaging than what is happening at school. And it's not only, I was using previously a false term. So at school, first comes disengagement, and then comes this compulsive use of internet. It always happens that way.
Yeah.
It doesn't happen that first you are addicted to something and then you
but
start
I think you
disengaging.
mentioned it that way,
Yes.
in that order. So
Yes.
And I was also thinking that it might be then because you're so bored, you're looking for other more entertaining things to do, and
it's
it
kind of
becomes like a bad habit
escapism.
in lack of
Yes.
other things.
But if imagine, you can blame I'm an idealistic person and naive.
Nope.
But I still, based on all the evidence I've seen, I know that we can engage our young people. We can promote their motivation. We can promote their interest. And we can help them enjoy going to school.
Yeah, and I want you to
Enjoy learning.
paint us a picture about this ideal school, because having all the knowledge that you have, how should the ideal school be then if we try to bypass this obedience kind of stage that I think that it's might be having benefits also for people who learn to do difficult things or hard things, boring things even if there's no real engagement and you're not really finding a meaning with it. But what would be, let's say, the ideal school path then, using this gamification approach, where you, let's say, get an even more difficult challenge as your reward, so it becomes even more difficult, but the challenge and the skill level is kind of helping you to get to this flow state continuously without having this boredom wasted, and maybe use for creativity if there's space for that. And how can technology then come into this? So let's talk about the future of education.
Yeah, because it's not enough that there is a challenge. The challenge needs to be meaningful from the perspective of the learner. So we can also help them to create meaning by, for instance, using the things that they are already doing. Because as I said, those kids who are knowledge-driven and interest-driven in their use of internet or smart devices, they are doing, they are doing better at school. So what if that knowledge and interest-driven activities would happen at school and when doing homework? And now we come to these possibilities of technology, because we are also now looking at the PISA 22 data. There are lots of questions about inquiry-based learning, about using technologies. And now with our PhD researchers, we've been starting to look at that data, and professor colleagues. And it appears that there is basic use of technology, like doing a Word document or creating a video. Then there's more advanced uses of technology, collaboratively, for instance, creating something. And then there are very advanced use of technology, including computational, algorithmic things and understanding data security. And all these advanced or computational uses of technology at school are extremely rare in any country, which is interesting. And also, if you look at just like one variable, like screen time and using technology, then you miss all this, that you can, what is the purpose and why do you use it and for what? But think about things like mathematics and languages. There are things that are kind of appear very boring, like endless lists of words, calculating. And nowadays, when there are so huge algorithms working against our kids, TikTok, all kinds of social media versions that are giving them instant pleasure of engagement, with showing all kinds of less or more or less useful or harmful materials. What if they would start becoming compulsively calculating mathematics or being really engaged in physics experiments, or being hungry for learning more words and expressing themselves in Spanish? I've used myself, a lady of my age, as an experiment. This is not scientific, but I just tested how far can I get with Duolingo, which is quite widely used application, studying Spanish. So I started studying 15 minutes a day. Actually, I couldn't keep it. I was studying more than 15 minutes a day for 2 years. And at the moment, I can also already carry on a simple discussion in Spanish, and I understand quite a lot, and I can communicate with professors who come from Latin America, a little at least.
That's amazing.
And I love it, and it's very engaging. I have to say that I got so hooked on it. I had to stop it for a while because I need to be on. I have to use my screen time on research. But what a way of doing homework.
Yeah.
We don't have to, even if we make school, if it's impossible or difficult to train all teachers so that they can make their teaching more engaging and meaningful and contextual, and many of them are. We have wonderful teachers in Finland who are doing wonderful things with children. But when it comes to equality, everybody needs to have equal opportunities, regardless of whether their teacher is enthusiastic of their work. So we can use technology to democratize training. And I especially want to do that, for instance, in Global South. And to save those children who are bored, who are lacking meaning, who are cynical about school, who are exhausted, to help them to have solutions that would put everybody, let's put our phones in learning mode. There is a flight mode. Please come up with a solution of a learning mode.
Yeah, I would love for Nokia maybe to take the lead there and make a learning phone.
Yes, you can all,
because
you
it
can
doesn't have to be a dumb
this.
phone
Yeah.
for us to become smart users of smartphones. And
but also we've been investigating people's readiness. For the readiness to regulate their phone use, and if they're totally incapable of regulating the use of their phones. Remember, they have great forces against them: algorithms, marketing, everything, putting off notifications, doing all this. Those who cannot regulate their phones, that in our study predicted shopping addiction, which predicted indebtedness. So you can get in serious trouble if you don't learn to use your smartphones in a smart way. And in many developing or Global South countries, people don't have computers. Here is huge calculation potential, bigger than this room when I was child. And they could use them for meaningful ways for developing themselves.
Yeah, I mean, I think definitely that's one part, the self-regulation. But then also we as adults cannot fight against the $1 billion of money put into algorithms that make us pretty much, if not addicted, but compulsive users of some applications. So not the phone per se, but some applications.
Yes.
That might not be in a learning device to start with, even if it's in the room. It distracts you from regulating. It's like being allergic to candy, let's say, being a diabetic. You shouldn't have candy at home. I mean, it's just stupid to buy candy and have it in. So you just don't buy it, so you don't have it at home. So you can self-regulate easier. You don't have to have a big jar of candy at home on your kitchen table and then just try to self-regulate.
Yes, but also we need to. Yeah, but we also need to. For instance, imagine if somebody has been banning your phones or some applications for years, and then you go to workplace. and you are totally out of it. You don't know. You cannot, for instance, I need to go to Instagram or LinkedIn or something for work.
Exactly.
And imagine in the middle of a professor's working day, I would get addicted to watching videos. So I need to learn all kinds of strategies. And if we just, what my point is, if we are just banning devices, that's stupid, because then who is teaching children to regulate their use?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's like if you ban, you should do it as with alcohol, 24 hours all the day, all the week, all year. But if you ban during school hours, it's not helpful if the same device is accessible at home and you are not educated in how to use it. But then also we have this brain development that if you're a preteen, you cannot expect people to be able to self-regulate in the same way as 25-year-olds. So like stepwise.
Yes, and we also need to think about developmental psychology.
Exactly.
Because children under 2 years, they don't need any devices. Especially, there is a great problem of using smart devices as babysitters.
Yeah.
And then small children need to be more playing outdoors rather than sitting in front of a device.
Yeah, that's just crazy.
But what is the problem is that you should start some part of it during primary school, because your self-regulatory skills, as you mentioned, they drop drastically around early teenage years. And then it's too late to start teaching these skills. You need to have the basis for reasonable smartphone use before you end up as a teenager, because then it takes some years before your brain reorganizes after that.
And that's really a fundamental principle, like of psychology that you mentioned in this book, that let's say with flipped learning also, if you're not used to it before you go into high school or before you become a teenager, it's very difficult that during your, let's say, teenage years to start learning a new methodology. So maybe you can mention something about that, and then let's go to your latest research and take us from this book to your next book.
Yes. Well, it makes me smile, because when I get these future teachers, when they are 19 years old and they come to our big classes that are flipped and blended and hybrid, and then we are interactive and activating their thoughts and discussing, they are like, why don't you lecture in a normal way, and why do I need to speak to other people here? And it appears that for many schools where they come from, they are not used to any of this. And we need to start from the scratches in teacher education in some cases. And also after COVID, 23 was a difficult year, because there were lots of people who came directly from high school, and they had spent the whole high school laptop on their laps and studying alone at home, and they didn't know how to be with people. So we needed to start training their social and emotional skills and their group dynamics and everything. Now things are better at the moment, but we've had these huge challenges. So for me, it looks like we don't have any digital natives. We don't have people. We have people who can do this, but they don't have a clue about what's inside the machine. What is an algorithm? What is data security? How to manage yourself, and that's, we can learn things like that. Like Linda Liukas has this Hello Ruby. Even very little kids without any computer, unplugged, they can start understanding what is an algorithm. So that is one broad-based competence we need to bring to schools. And in our research, our latest research, we noticed that future teachers felt the lowest efficacy in teaching exactly these things. But what's interesting, male and science background teachers had more competence or experience, more competent, but also women who had been learning these things at school, they felt that they are competent to teach others. If I don't feel competent in psychology, how can I teach psychology to others? So this is important to understand, that we need to develop systematically readiness to make use of our devices in a smart way.
Yeah. So please summarize some of the points that you are researching now or you've seen now that will come in your next book. And say something about your next book, please.
Well, actually, I'm rewriting kind of my books in post-pandemic world. Like, what is sustainable learning in this era of AI? How can we learn and teach in a way that people truly learn things in a deep level and can apply it? And one thing that comes with AI is this understanding that AI is not just some kind of tool. AI can be our companion in many ways. And my colleagues talk about hybrid AI, which means that we are going to be networks of seamless networks with human agents and AI agents. And I've been doing research for a long time. One of my favorite topics is sounds dangerous epistemic cognition.
Okay.
These epistemic issues about what is knowledge, what is knowing, and what is learning. We are investigating this with my research group. For instance, many of us have this kind of flat thinking about knowledge and knowing. Many people think that things are as they appear to be. And knowledge is just telling you things and feeding in and transmitting knowledge, and learning is just acquiring, taking in simple knowledge. And if it doesn't happen quickly, and if it's not simple, and you have to struggle, then it's terrible. So we need to sweat and struggle because our brain is very plastic. There's a huge plasticity in our brain. It's like any muscle. If you don't use your brain, you lose it. We can cause ourselves dementia. I can postpone my potential dementia for years if I just keep struggling and learning new things and enjoying learning new things and being curious. And our latest study actually showed that of those who we followed over the years, who survived COVID the best, engagement went down and bounced back, or they keep engaged over the pandemic years. The most important kind of approach was curiosity. Those who remained curious and interested, they actually remained engaged and energetic over years. So these social emotional things are extremely important. But also our epistemic emotions that are related to knowledge, like interest and curiosity and being confused. You need to tolerate being confused and wondering things and asking questions. Otherwise, you'll never learn any natural sciences because by definition, physics is confusing.
And to be comfortable with it being
You need to struggle
difficult.
at the upper levels, and you need to have somebody who is challenging you in a meaningful and way. But if we have this kind of flat thinking about knowledge, like things are as they appear to be, then we are very prone to deceit and fake news and deep fake videos. If we don't learn this critical thinking, that we are constantly questioning our own thinking and developing our thinking and reflecting and thinking about our own thinking, and not taking anything for granted, because it's also a security threat. Cyber war is on, information war is on. It's been over at least 10 years. And for instance, nations fall, chaoses are coming because people are believing all kinds of attempts of other nations to influence their citizens and trying to break down their democratic systems or their lawful systems. We know what's going on in the world. It's crazy. And I'm so sorry for these young people who are so confused. And we need to train their minds and help them to learn how to think and think about their thinking and understand how they think about their thinking. That's epistemic.
So
And
what would
that's
be-
epic, I would say.
That would be epic, yes. So what would be your recommendation as a final recommendation to teachers maybe and parents maybe also and higher education students about how to stay curious in the age of AI? So how to go deeper and foster your curiosity? Any recommendation that you could give?
Yes, and also I think it's almost like a criminal act to say that we don't have time for thinking at school. We don't have time for questions at school. In educational point of view, less is more. Less knowledge, more deeply. You can figure out some details later. It doesn't mean that you just Google everything, or it means that you are focusing on the core concepts and most important things that everybody needs to understand, that children are not supposed to be afraid of sweating a bit or struggling, but they need scaffolding, they need our help and not left alone. And they need adult guidance as well, but not adult control.
Exactly.
They need to become autonomous thinkers, and they need to learn how to love learning. And it's our responsibility to make sure that we are not destroying their joy for learning.
I think that's a very beautiful final comment, that they have to learn how to love learning. That's what we should aspire for. So I look very much forward to reading your book when it's finished, and I look forward to having you back and talk more about your next adventures also. Thank you very much, Kirsti. It was a pleasure to learn from you today, and I look forward to having you back soon.
Thank you. I enjoyed this conversation a lot. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you. My pleasure. Bye-bye.